Hello there. How's everybody doing? Let me know if all the sound's okay. That should all be fine. I'll just bring that down a touch so you better see my hands. So, last week seemed to go quite well with the walking bass thing. So, I'll do another one this week on something a little bit more, well, not useful, because walking bass is obviously useful, but this is something that when I first learned I first learned about it, it was a light bulb moment. And what I'm talking about is harmonizing of the major scale. So we're talking intervals within a major scale, and more importantly, the chords within a major scale. So you'll see how this all ties into everything music in a bit, but I'll just give it a few minutes before I start talking, because I don't want because there'll probably be a lot of people turn up within about the next 5 minutes, and I don't want to have already started, because there's a few things that I have to talk about first before we get into the harmonizing bit. Oh, hi, David. David Price, one of my old students. Wow, we've already got a few going on there. Let's see how we're doing in terms of numbers. 67 there, that's fine. And then, how many we got over here? Ooh. I can't even see on the Facebook one. Anyway, so let's see what we've got. Jan. Cool. Sounds good. I'm out to go some, but watch rest later. Yeah. Be warned when you watch the replays on the Facebook feed, because this is going out on YouTube and Facebook. On the Facebook feed, you'll notice that my voice is a little bit out of sync when you watch it back. Something to do with the encoding with Facebook. It's always fine with YouTube, but Facebook screw it up. Hi, Mary. Yeah, I told you I'd be here in a minute. Yeah, I had to start a little bit later than normal because I was having a few technical problems. And who we've got over in YouTube there? We've got people from everywhere. Thailand, Canada, Athens, Germany, Vancouver. Yeah, David, I've not used a baseball. Is that the that's the Electro Harmonics one, isn't it? Yeah, I've not used that before, so I ain't really got any tips for you. Ukraine. Been a while since I've been to the Ukraine. I bet it's cold there right now. Every time I've been there, it's been freezing cold, and that's in the summer. Portsmouth, just over the water there. Have you had any snow? We've not. It's freezing cold here, but we've not had any snow yet. Long Island, Poland. Again, that'll be pretty chilly. Chilly Barnsley. Hiya, Richard. Have you got any snow up there? Ohio, Turkey, Estonia. It's funny, isn't it? Looking at all the different places that we're all from. We're all sort of meeting up in this one little place. It's cool that that side of the net. Cotswolds, no snow. Yeah, I thought there'd be some snow over there. Cool. Right. So nice. So, two things. So the first, the main thing that I'm going to talk about is obviously this harmonizing of the major scale thing. But also, I had somebody ask about, it was in one of the comments, I think, asking about playing without looking at the bass. And I said, oh, that's a really good topic, actually, because that's something that a lot of people probably struggle with. And I've never really thought about it that much because I've always, just done it. But it is something that people probably find quite tricky. So I'll give you a few pointers on that just before I start off. So one of the main things that you'll find with not looking at the bass is that you have to think in terms of positions. So, for instance, if you were here and you were on a C, right, 3rd fret of the A string, and let's say you were only playing that C with one finger, think about it. You wouldn't have any problems, would you? You put it there and you'd be like, or whatever the bass line is, right? So you're not going to have any problems. It's just sat there. So really, when you think about actually moving around without, when you think about playing without looking, what you're actually asking is, how do I move from one position to another without moving? And I'll show you how that actually means position shifts. I don't actually think you're going to be having problems moving from note to note in one position, because think about it. If you're on a C here, and then the next note, let's say there's only 2 notes in the song, and you've got C and then a D, right? Well, again, that's going to be pretty easy. I mean, you could do one of 2 things, couldn't you? You could play with one finger like that, and then move to a D, which means moving up like that. Now, that is tougher, probably, than playing it 1st finger and then 4th finger, because then all you've got to do is go between the 2 fingers. But when you actually have to move with one finger, that's actually position shifting. You're actually moving from the C to the D. So if you're not looking, you've got to know that distance, and that's the key. It's knowing about distance. Think about someone like Stevie Wonder or Ray Charles, people like that, where they're blind, but they're playing piano, and they've got to move all over the place. All of that comes from kind of muscle memory, but it's to do with distancing and calibrating your body to these different distances, and you get used to different distances. So a lot of it's that, but you can start off with working on that by just thinking in terms of positions. Now, if you think of, let's look at this first position. I class this as kind of my kind of low first position, okay? So we're talking, well, the actual position would be 2nd fret to 5th fret. So we've got basically a C major scale there. Anybody that's done my sight reading course will know what I'm talking about because I use this positioning for sight reading. So you've got those notes there. And then we go down to the B, the A, the G, and the F. Now, the only natural note in that opening area that's outside of that 2nd fret to 5th fret is the F. Everything else, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, is all from the 2nd fret to the 5th fret, which just so happens is a spread of 4 frets, as in 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can assign the fingers there, 1, 2, 3, 4, if you're using 1 finger per fret. Now, I'm not a massive advocate of 1 finger per fret, but for some things, it's good, right? So let's say that you're in that position and you've got the 1st finger there assigned to the 2nd fret, 2nd finger there for the 3rd fret, 3rd finger for the 4th fret, and then the pinky, the 4th finger for the 5th fret. And you've just got your fingers there. If you're just on the the E string there, well, you'll be playing G with the 2nd finger and then A with the 4th finger. And you don't have to move. You don't have to think. So then all it is a case of, playing the right finger. So if, let's say we've got a bass line that goes G, A, F sharp, G, G, A, F sharp, G, right? I can look away. I don't have to look. I'm just pressing down the fingers, right? So that's a position method, a 1 finger per fret way of playing without looking. So then it's just a case of knowing which finger takes which fret. Of course, the problem comes when you've got an F in there, or if you've got flats and sharps like B flat, E flat, A flat, etc. Then you've got to start thinking of moving down to the F and possibly moving back up here. And this is where position shifts start coming in. Now, I'm not talking about, moving up positions like this. I'm just talking about moving between 1 fret. So that's your first task, is to get used to just moving by 1 fret there and back. Okay, so if I'm on a G and I want to go to an F, there and back. Okay? That you've got to just get used to the distance between that F and that G, and you want to try it with various fingers. So now I'm not really talking about a 1 finger per fret thing. I'm just talking about moving between frets and getting used to the distance. So just take 1 finger, play an F, 1st fret there on the E string, and then get used to, without looking, going to a G. Just without looking. And that position, obviously, that movement is always the same. So you just get used to maybe 1 move, F to G. Get used to that. If you can get used to that, then the other moves are going to seem quite similar, because you've got used to the movement of 2 frets there. The movement from G to A is very similar, okay? So that's just using 1 finger. But the other thing to get used to is actually the movement from, let's say, the F to the A there with the 4th finger. So 1st finger for the F and then moving to the A with the 4th finger. And that's where people find it a little bit tricky. So if I'm playing F, 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 A, without looking, when you first try it, it's just a case of random, okay, I'll just go for it and see what I come up with. But you really need to kind of get used to that distance and be able to do that without looking. If you can do that first finger, 1st fret to 4th finger, 5th fret move, that is another big feather in your cap for actually dealing with these kind of position shifts. Because then you can be in this position, let's say we're looking at G major, right? Or C major. Let's go C major, so we can use that F. Go down to the F, back to the G, and back. Okay, and if you're playing in that key, just getting used to that. Okay, so it's a combination of getting used to moving around with 1 finger and just getting used to distances and then getting used to actual position shifts between fingers. And I mean, there's a limitless number of different position shifts that you could conceivably do. So it's just, it's just getting used to a variety of them by just playing certain songs and just getting used to the moves that are in there. But you need to start easy. If you can start playing without looking and just playing easy stuff where you're only moving a few frets, then, you can move on from there. But one thing I would say is that if you learn to read music, if you learn to, I always say this, that, reading music is one of those things subjects that you can, or topics that you can start learning, that has a lot of benefits outside of just reading music. Reading music, yeah, you learn to read music. All right, that's one benefit. But if you're not somebody that's going to be doing a lot of music reading on gigs and stuff like that, then it's possibly not going to be, learning to read music might not be something that you ever even need to do. But a lot of the other stuff, like this, like being able to play without looking at the fretboard, or the notes on the neck, or rhythm, just in terms of learning about subdivisions and stuff, all of that you study in massively in depth when you're learning to read, because you can't learn to read music and be looking at the neck, can you? You've got to be looking at the page. I'm looking, whatever, these are the new parts for the new sight reading course. You've got to be looking at that, and if I'm just, let's say I'm reading the part that I've just written out there, I can't look at this. I can't be looking at the, I've got to be looking at that. I can't be looking at the bass, okay? So that gets you really good at it, because you've got to think in terms of positions and all that stuff. But also with reading, you learn a lot about rhythm, and, in terms of learning the notes on the neck, I think reading did more for my note learning than anything else. And any of you that have seen many of my live streams will know exactly what I'm talking about. I talk about this all the time. But if you want to, nail all that side of your playing, then start learning to read. Now, a lot of you will be thinking, yeah, but I don't know how to learn to read. It's one thing saying, oh, learn to read. But that's why I've done that course. So if you really want to learn to read, then, it's a bit of a shameless plug, but there's my sight reading course. It's very, very useful for you. And I think the one that I've done is possibly the only one on the market, and will be the only one on the market for quite a long time, that goes in depth to the level that it does in terms of the amount of material that you cover. A lot of other sight reading courses and books will show you, right, there's some notes, that's what the rhythms are, that's what the notes are, practice it. They'll give you some examples, but you can only do so much within within a small book. There's not that much you can do, whereas with this course, there's like hundreds and hundreds of pages of examples, like real world examples, and it takes you from absolute basics of, there's a G, there's an F, right through to loads of other stuff, like being able to play all over the neck and all the rhythms, all the way through to 7 sharp, 7 flats in a key signature, tied, semiquart, 16th note rhythms, all that stuff. So anyway, there's a bit of a plug for that while we're on the topic. So, just before I start with the harmonizing the major scale, let's just have a quick see what we got here. It's cold as balls in the UK. Yeah, it's cold as balls right here. -1 when I was packing up for last night's gig. Yeah, it's carrying gear in the cold sucks, doesn't it? Late at night, like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're packing the van up or whatever, and you've lugging speakers and racks and flight cases. It's and then you have the trek home in the cold. My biggest trouble is getting the right and left fingers mixed up when finger picking and moving positions. Do you mean on the right and left? Oh, right, okay. Right and left fingers. Do you mean on the finger picking? So Bit unsure with that one. When moving positions. Mark, I think you love the C major scale. No, I don't. It's just that the reason I use C major as an example a lot is because there's no sharps or flats in there. So it's always easy to be able to demonstrate stuff, and it's kind of like the vanilla scale. I would definitely say that you need to practice playing in all the other keys. I mean, I can't. It's very rare I actually play in C major. There's not many songs that I can think of off the bat that are in C. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of songs in C, but you'll often have things in F, B flat, E flat. As you go more into the sort of jazzier kind of thing, it's all going to be flat keys like F, B flat, E flat, A flat. But then for a lot of pop and rock stuff, you're going to be looking at A major, E major, obviously, or E minor, stuff like that. So in a practical setting, I don't really play C major that much. I just like to use it as an example. Now, I know that on a lot of other lessons that I see, people will purposely move from one key to another. They'll say, oh, let's not do it in C, let's do it in F, or let's do it in B flat, or whatever, just to mix things up, which is a great idea, but I find that it can sometimes hamper things, especially if you're trying to talk about something like a theory kind of thing. So if you're trying to give an example of thirds or chords or whatever, chords in a key, like I'll be doing in a minute, it's easier if you don't have sharps in there, because you can just say, look, it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Anyway. Can't learn dyslexic. I actually taught a dyslexic bass player. I taught him to read. It was tough. It was tougher than non-dyslexic people, bass players. But he was having problems with me, and I was using the course that I've actually, the simple steps to sight reading that I have up on the site, but long before I did the course, all the material that I did, that's how I used to teach when I used to teach in a music college. And, I had to teach all these budding young bass players how to read. And, they didn't even want to learn to read, a lot of them. But this one lad, he was having a little bit of a trouble with very simple notes on there. And it turned out, after a while, I realised that it was dyslexic. He told me it was dyslexic, but he'd not told me that at the start. But we just took it very, very slow. And the knowledge, he took on the knowledge and he could do it. It's just that he wasn't as fluent in it. And he needed time to work stuff out because everything got jumbled up, But it's still, he still did fine. Yes, I will be incorporating some interviews into the channel after Christmas, I think. I keep meaning to start doing it, but I need to get the infrastructure sorted before I do it. I want to do it right. Yeah. Biffy Clyro seemed to have a lot of songs in downtuned C. I've not learned... Now, here's something. I've not actually learned... probably any Biffy Clyro tunes at all, but a good friend of mine actually plays guitar in Biffy Clyro. So I've seen him live, but Mike Venart, who, if you know Biffy Clyro, you'll know he's the touring guitarist with them. Yeah, we went to college. He was in a band called Ocean Size. He's a great guitarist. Just looking at him in Biffy Clyro, you don't really get to see that much. And actually, in terms of his... even in Ocean Size, I mean, as much as it had incredibly intricate arrangements and he sung in Ocean Size as well. When I remember when we started at music college, he was, there were like several guitarists there that were all like shredders, and he was one of them really, but he was very much, I always used to think of him as being the Steve Vai clone kind of guy. He just knew all the tricks, all the Steve Vai stuff. We're talking like 1992, I think, and he just used to do all this Vai stuff, and he was an incredibly talented guitarist. But now you don't see him soloing at all. To look at him, you wouldn't know that he's this, virtuoso guitarist. But yeah, he is. I've not seen Mike in a while. We're both massive Cardiacs fans. If you've ever heard of Cardiacs. Hi, Mark. I'm having issues using scale modes while playing. Could you give me some insight? I might talk about that in a bit because it might tie in with the thing that I'm about to cover. It seems like we've got quite a few people in, so I'll start with the little seminar. Right, I'll get talking about this and then I'll come back to it. Biffy Clyro's Song of Wolves of Winter flips between 4/4 and 7/4. Yeah, they use a lot of odd time signatures, and Mike is a wizard when it comes to odd time signatures. If you've not checked out Oceanside, check out Oceanside. I mean, they're no longer around. If that all finished, but yeah, if you like odd time signatures, then he's a wizard when it comes to that stuff. So what we're going to look at is harmonizing of the major scale. So I won't see any of the comments for a while because I'll concentrate on what I'm doing. But yeah, so a few things that you need to know before I talk about this stuff. So, like, you know, first of all, you're going to need to know a major scale, right? So if you don't know a major scale, you're going to need to know that first. So let's take a C major scale. Okay, so that's a C major scale. So if I was playing it in C, I'll just go over it just in case, but I'm pretty sure most of you probably know this. So 3rd fret, 5th fret, A string, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, D string, 2nd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret, G string. Good old C major, as we were talking about earlier. So that's the major scale. You want to be able to play it all over the place, even if it's only with that 1-octave box pattern. I mean, you need to be able to play it all over the place, you know, in several different positions and all of that stuff, and know the notes and everything. But if you only know that, that's okay for now. So that's the major scale. Now, the other thing that you're going to need to know is a few intervals. Now, we'll only look at a couple, right? So you're going to need to know a major third and a minor third. So if you look at a major scale, so if we take that C major again, to work out the intervals within that major scale, we just number the notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're back to 1, okay? So for a major third, we want 1. So we've got C is 1, and then D is 2, E is 3. So we want 1 and 3. So E is a major third from C. Okay, so that's a major third interval. So you want to get used to that pattern. So I'm pretty sure most of you know that probably as well. So there's that good old major third, okay? And you'll know that from a major triad because that's it's in there. So there's a major third. For a minor third, it's easy to think that intervals are created from scales, which they're not really. I mean, a minor third isn't from a minor scale. Even though it is in a minor scale, it's not derived necessarily from the minor scale. What we actually have is we just take that top note and we drop it down a half step. So we're going to take it down a fret. So that's a minor third. So for a major third, we've got C to E. So 3rd fret, A string, 2nd fret, D string. And for a minor third, we've got C to E flat. So 3rd fret, A string, 1st fret on the D string. Okay? So that's those two patterns. You want to be able to see those anywhere. It's just a measurement. That's all it is. It's just a measurement of musical distance. So you want to be able to play that major third anywhere on the neck. Okay? Just look at that pattern. Okay? It's just up a string and down a fret. Wherever you play that, that's a major third pattern, okay? Same with the minor third, get used to that. Okay, so that pattern there, up a string and down 2 frets, is a minor third, okay? So that's your first two things there, the first two intervals you need to know. Now, you also want to know those intervals on one string as well. So instead of just knowing that that's a major third there, you want to know the alternative fingering for it, which would be C there, that 3rd fret of the A string, and then the 7th fret of the A string. So we're working up to it on the same string. And think of it as 3 frets in between. That's one way of looking at it. Or think you know, going up a major scale like that, and then just missing out the middle notes. But either way, you want to know that wherever it is a major third. So we've got two different fingerings for it. So if I'm on an A there, see, it's the same two notes, A and C sharp. Okay, so that's the alternative fingering. Same for the minor third. So we had the C to E flat there. You also want to know that on one string, C to E flat, which you'll know from minor scales, minor, you know, whatever, minor arpeggios, blues scales, whatever. You'll probably have seen that there, that minor third. So often people will go for that as a minor scale or whatever. They'll start on the first finger and use that minor third there. But we've also got the minor third there. So we've got two fingerings for each of those intervals, just because of the way that the fretboard is. On a piano, you wouldn't. You just have like C to E, you know. But we've got those two, okay? So that's very, very important. So we've now got a major scale that we can play anywhere. We've got a major third pattern and a minor third pattern in two different positions, okay? So now we've got that. Oh, by the way, I just saw 3 to 7 is a hell of a stretch. Don't worry about stretching it. You don't have to necessarily do that. I mean, I can do that quite easily, but it's you want to have you want to be able to jump it like that. So if you sort of take it with your first finger there, and then just stretch as far as you can, and then just pivot with the thumb there. And that's a good point. Anybody that has problems with stretches, bear in mind you can pivot. I mean, I've done loads of lessons on pivoting before, in case you've not seen any. But if you've got that thumb there, you can pivot it. Can you see what I'm doing there? I'm just doing that, right? So if I'm on, let's say we take a tough stretch, right? So let's say we take the D there to the G, 7th fret to the 12th fret. Now, I can just about do that. So that's 7th fret to 12th fret on the G string. But some of you might find that quite tough. So if you do that, play the D there, 7th fret of the G string. Look where my thumb is. I've got it a little bit further up than the actual fret. So then stretch the hand out. Make sure that the fingers are parallel to the frets. You don't want them like this. Make sure that they're parallel to the frets and actually bring them around a little bit so that 4th finger is level. You want all your fingers to be level like that. Stretch it out. It's kind of like this. And then just pivot the thumb like that. Take the finger off. Take that first finger off. That way, I mean, I see if I can do it. You can sometimes get, by pivoting, I can actually get an octave on the same string. So C there, 5th fret of the G string, pivot, and then the C up at the octave there at the 17th fret. Oops. I mean, that, you would never do that. But it just shows how far you can go with the pivot. And that's just by doing that. So if you're down here, I use that kind of pivot action quite a lot. Play on a note. Look at that. 2nd fret to the 7th fret. I'm not even thinking about it very much. Dead easy. I'm not moving the hand. I'm just using the thumb. Okay? So that's just a little tip for that. And there's, you know, you should be able to, stretching shouldn't be an issue on bass. You've got to get used to position shifts. Even if you've got tiny little hands, it doesn't matter. You don't need to really think about stretching that much. Don't try stretching your fingers too much. Get used to position shifts more and pivoting. When I was younger, I used to be obsessed with getting a bigger stretch. I don't know why. It's just one of those things. Loads of guitarists were into it. George Lynch and Alan Holdsworth and all these kind of dudes who got these crazy chords and things. And so I was always obsessed with it. I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to stretch my fingers. And I used to sit there doing this and stretching my fingers out. It's complete. Apart from anything, you can damage your hands. But it's completely pointless. And this is coming from someone that used to do that all the time, right? You don't need to. When you're sat here like this playing in these areas, I mean, you just never bother. It's more useful to learn how to position shift smoothly, because position shifts are going to be common anyway. You're going to have to learn to position shift. You're not going to be stretching from there to there all the time. You've got to get used to smooth position shifts. And the more position shifts you get used to, you know, so that you're not just staying in one position, the more you're going to just start thinking, oh, well, I'll just move around, just move the hand around and get it so that so that is smooth, okay? So anyway, I'm digressing quite a bit. Good Lord, Mark, monster hands. No, they're not monster hands. I've got fairly big. They're not massive. I've got big palms. But like I say, I used to sit there stretching and stretching. It's technique. It's more technique than it is anything else. Get the hands in the right position. Bring that fourth finger round more. People always end up like this, and they're like, oh, I can't stretch it. And it's like, well, you judge it by the fourth finger. That fourth finger wants to be parallel with those frets. Every time I'm doing this with people, I realize that they don't have their hands in a parallel. Can you see how the fingers, and actually, when you're on the E string, I'm not even parallel. I've actually got the fourth finger pointing kind of in a bit in order to get them. If you do that with your fingers, you want them all to be level on that string. And to do that, you actually have to pretty much get the thumb going up the neck like that and have the hand round more and the elbow tucked in. It's all technique. It's not monster hands or anything like this. Yeah. So anyway, back to harmonizing the major scale. So we've now got the major scale and we've got these 2/3. I cannot stress how important it is to learn these intervals, just those 2/3 to begin with. Also, it's handy to know a perfect fifth interval. You need to learn all of your intervals, but to begin with, those thirds are important and your fifth. But we'll stick with the thirds for now. Now, let's go back to that major scale. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this major scale down here at the 8th fret and of the 8th fret of the E string. So we're on a C major. Okay. It's worth knowing that you've got a C there and a C there. Okay. This is another tip if you don't know the notes on your neck very well. For every note that you play on an A string, you've got another one exactly the same, just a little bit further up on the E string. So you've always got this kind of symmetry going on. There's an F, B flat, like that. So we've got this C here. Now let's take it up a little bit further. Let's fill in some notes up here. So we've got the C, the octave. Let's just put the D, E, and F. Remember the notes of C major? C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So we'll put the D in, the E in, and the F there at the top. We could even go up to the G, okay? Okay, so we've just extended that pattern a little bit. And we want the B below it there, 7th fret. So just start on the C, work up like you normally would, and then just add D, E, F, G. Okay, 7th fret, 9th fret, 10th fret, and 12th fret. And that just gives us a few more notes to play with, okay? So what we're going to be doing is looking at the notes that are within that, the intervals that are within the major scale. And, when you look at actual thirds that are in there, think back to the third interval, right? If we count up through the scale, so 1, 2, 3, okay, we can see we've got that major third. Now, that's pretty obvious that you're going to have a major third on the first degree of the scale. But what about if we start a third pattern on the second note of the major scale? Well, what did we do with that very first note to get that third? We counted up 3 notes. Now, if you think about that, what in effect we did, we went 1, 2, 3. But it can get a bit confusing when you're working up from like the second or the fourth note or the fifth note and you're thinking 1, 2, 3. So what you're actually doing is playing a note, missing a note, and then playing a note. Okay? Play the C, miss the D, play the E. C, E. Okay, so we've got that C major interval there, that major third interval. Don't worry about whether you're playing it as a harmonic chord or a melodic chord interval. Just play them one note after the other. Okay, so think about it. Play a note, miss a note, play a note to get a third. So if we start on the second note of the major scale, we play D, miss the E, play the F. D, F. Okay? Now, that gives us that interval. Have a look at what we've got. 10th fret E string, 8th fret A string. think back to the intervals that we just played. You know, the major third and minor third intervals. Is it a major third? No, it's not a major third. That's the minor third that we were looking at. So if we play a third starting on the first note of the major scale, we get a major third. If we start on the second note, we get a minor third. Okay? Hopefully this is making sense, right? Now start on the third, E, right? So think back to what I said. Play a note, miss a note, play a note. So we start on that E there, the 7th fret of the A string. We've played the E, we miss the F, play the G. Okay? So we've got E to G there, 7th fret to 10th fret of the A string. Think back to what interval that is that we've got there. Think back to the intervals that we looked at on one string. That's a minor third again. You can even hear it's a minor third. So far in the major scale we have C to E, which is a major third, D to F, which is a minor third, E to G, which is a minor third. Then we move to the 4th of the scale, the F, and we have play a note, miss a note, play a note, F, G, A. Okay, that's a major third. So if we played on the F, we're still in C major. This is all in the major C major scale. If we start on the 4th degree of that scale, we get a major third interval. Now, some of you might be thinking already, now then, I can imagine where this is going. This is how we get chords within a key. But don't rush. Let's just still work through them. So, I've got a little thing here. Hold on. Let me just move me. Just move me to the side. So, have a look at the C major scale there. I've done in notes. I've done the G major scale as well. But if you have a look at the C major scale there, we had C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. It's actually easier if you look at it in terms of the note names rather than looking at the pattern. So if you look at C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, look at the thirds there. Play a note, miss a note. So we had C, D, E. Okay, C to E, D to F, D, E, F, E, F, G, F, G, A, G, A, B, C, B, C, D, right? Play a note, miss a note. So we had C to E, D to F, E to G, F to A, G to B, A to C, and B to D. That gives us our set of thirds within that major scale. Okay, so hopefully this is making sense, like I said. So now I can go back through that major scale and play those thirds. So we had C to E. I mean, you can actually, without even knowing the notes or anything, just by knowing that sequence of the thirds, we can think major third on the first, minor third on the second, minor third on the third, major third on the fourth, major third on the fifth, minor third on the 6th, and then minor third on the 7th. And what we get is a sequence of thirds. Okay, so that's just a C major scale broken up into its individual thirds. Now, you might be thinking, oh man, how do you remember that sequence? Well, there's a shortcut. So all you have to think of is that the 1st, 4th, and 5th degrees of that scale have a major third. The rest of them are all minor. So think about what I said there. 1, 4, and 5. Think blues progression. 1, 4, 5, or whatever. First is major. So let's go through them. Number 1, major third. Number 2, minor third. Number 3, minor third. Number 4, major third. Number 5, major third. 6, minor third, 7, minor third. All minor thirds apart from 1, 4, and 5. 1, 4, and 5, when you get to see the chords that you build from there, are the primary triads. So just think about those major intervals in there, or the major chords in a key, as being the primary ones, because you're in a major key and they're the major chords, right? So I'll go through those again. So we work through. So starting on C, think major third. If you know the third intervals that I talked about, major third and minor third, you'll be able to do it. So 1 is a major third, 2, minor third, 3, minor third, 4, major third. 5, major third. 6, minor third. 7, minor third. And then we're back to the roots. And then when I came down, I just came down backwards. Okay, so it just gives you this nice, just a nice little exercise. Now, don't think of the exercise as being the important part of this, you know, in terms of, oh, it's a finger exercise. Don't think about that. Just think about the actual intervals that are within there, okay? So, major third, minor third, minor third, major third, major third, minor third, minor third, okay? So you can see them all there on that sheet. Now, you really want to get to learn these in every key, but it's the same sequence in every key. So look at G major. So let's do it just from the notes there. G major, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. Okay, so we go through them again. G, miss the A, play the B. G to B. A, miss the B. C, A, C. Same thing, work through them. G, B, A, C, B, D, C, E, D, F sharp, E, G, F sharp, A. Okay, so if I was to play them on here, G to B, there's that major third. A to C, there's the minor third pattern. B to D, there's the minor third pattern. C to E, D to F sharp, E to G, F sharp to A, and back. Exactly the same pattern. So you just have to learn that sequence of intervals. Now, let me just, I'll keep that on screen so that you can see that. But that sequence extends also to when we learn chords within a key, right? So you don't want to rush this too much, though. You just want to really, really nail that. Now, one thing that you can do is start learning these as chords. So let's say I'll do these on G, right? So that we can actually play up the neck, right? So what you want to do is learn that major and minor third as a little double stop or chord, right? So if you look at the G, there, the major third interval we had, okay? So we're going to do this up on the D and the G string. So take the G there, 5th fret of the D string, and then the B at the 4th fret of the G string. Let me get into position so you can see it a little bit easier. There's that major third. If we put both of those fingers down at the same time, pick them both together, I'm just picking those with the 1st and 2nd fingers, we get that nice little major third. Have a listen to what that sounds like. It's that's a major third, okay? So you really need to know what a major third sounds like. Okay, so that's a major third interval. Very happy. As opposed to the minor third, which is sad. Okay, there's ear training 101. There you've got the major third happy, minor third is sad. Right? So, start with that major third. Now what we're going to do is work up each of the notes of that G major scale, starting, we'll just be playing them on the D string there. So we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Okay, so you just need to learn those first of all. So 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, 10th fret, 12th fret, 14th fret, 16th fret, 17th fret. Okay, this is where knowing a major scale on one string comes in. It's funny, isn't it? It's like you learn a major scale, you learn it across strings. You would think learning something across strings would be easier than learning, would be harder than learning something on one string. But it's much harder to play on one string. If you only had one string on your bass, can you imagine how difficult everything would be? It'd like be really tough. So we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So now what we're going to do is we're going to keep using the 2nd finger or 3rd finger, tracking that D string up, and we're just going to play those third intervals that we've looked at. So first of all, we had the major third. Then we move up to the A with the 3rd finger there, and we're going to play that minor third. Okay, so that's that minor third. So I'm playing the 7th fret D string and 5th fret G string. Okay, So this really you really nail your third intervals by doing this. So that's the minor third. Then we move up a whole step again to the B, play the minor third again. So it's the same pattern, just up there. Then we move to the C at the 10th fret of the D string, and we play the major third interval. Then we move that major third up a whole step to the D. Then we move up a whole step again to the E and play a minor third. And then we move up a whole step again to the F sharp and play the minor third. And then we're back up to the octave of G, major third. Okay? So, oops. You can hear the key there. You can hear. That was bad, wasn't it? You can hear the major scale moving up. Bum, bum, and. So you want to learn it up and down. But that's it. We've basically harmonized the major scale. We've actually the top note there. We're starting on the third, really. We're harmonizing it below. And you'll find that that's a really nice little thing to be able to do. You'll see me in solos sometimes just sort of moving into the thirds there. You know, instantly that sounds a little bit more musical than going. See what I'm doing there? I'm basically playing the major scale, starting on the root note on the D string, and then the major scale starting on the third, but on the G string. Okay, so that's how we harmonize that major scale in thirds. Earlier I was just messing around just so that I could give you something so that you could hear it in action. Let me just put that on. Move back to the looper. I made a little loop up that was just a bass line so I could play those. There we go. So just a G major vamp, you know, very simple, just so that you can hear what these chords sound like, these double stops over that G. So. Really simple. So that was just over a G, just playing over a G major and then just, working around that G major scale. Now, once you've learned to do that and you know that sequence, because that's the key, is learning the sequence of them, knowing major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor, and back to major. And like I said, 1, 4, and 5 are major. That's how I remember it. I just know that 1, 4, and 5 are major. I don't think major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor, major. It's just too robotic. It's just, it's like remembering a huge telephone number. But if you just think, 1, 4, and 5 are major. So as I'm working through, I'm thinking 1 is major, 2, well, it's not major because it's not 1, 4, or 5. And then 3, well, I know that's not major because it's not 1, 4, or 5. And then we get to 4 and it's like, that's major. And then 5, and it's like, that's major. And then 6, it's like, that's not 1, 4, or 5, so it's minor. And then 7, that's not 1, 4, or 5, right? But at light speed, I mean, I'm saying that, I actually just know them. But, when you first start doing it, that 1, 4, 5 is major thing that will probably help. So that's how to look at the triads within there. Now, once you've learned that, you can extend it further. because if you know how to create thirds in a scale, you can do the same thing with triads and seventh chords and ninth chords, whatever you want to do. But and fourths, sixths, fifths, you know, you can actually work through the major scale looking at, let's say, fourths. You know, you can work through with fifths. You know, you can use all kinds of different intervals. But you can also use combinations of intervals. So if we take the triads. Now, for a triad, we're going to be looking at the third, like we did, but then we're going to add the fifth into the mix. So we're going to be, what we're actually doing is thinking of two stacked thirds. Any of you that have seen my Chord Tone Essentials course will know that this is how you create chords. A chord isn't just 1, 3, and 5. You know, that's what a lot of people learn it as. It's like, oh, how do you make a chord? Oh, it's the root, the third, and the fifth. Yes, it is. But the reason for that is because you've got two thirds, one stacked on top of the other. It's called tertian harmony. So if we've got the third there, think of how we made the thirds in the key. We had play a note, miss a note, play a note. So all we've got to do is do that again. So we have play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note. So we've got C, miss the D, play the E, miss the F, play the G. And that gives us a major triad, C, E, G. Now, obviously, for you to be able to spot what these patterns are within there, you will need to know what a major and minor triad are. So let's have a look at that. So for a major, let's do it. We'll do it here. So a major triad, just in case you didn't know, is going to be C, E, and G. Right? We'll just learn the patterns to begin with, just so you can visually do this. So that's going to be 8th fret E string, 7th fret A string, and 10th fret A string. So you've got C, E, G, which is root, major third, perfect fifth, which if you look is actually a major third pattern and a minor third pattern. Major third up to the E, and then a minor third up to the G. Okay, so there's two different ways of looking at it, and both are valid, right? So that's a major triad, root, third, and fifth. For a minor triad, we just have a minor third instead of a major third. So you could do it there. So C, E flat, G. Okay? Now there's several different patterns for these, which I'll talk about in a second. But that would be a minor triad. So C, E flat, G. 8th fret E string, 6th fret A string, and 10th fret A string. Now, I know there's going to be some of you out there that are thinking, that's not a minor triad, that's a minor triad. I've learned one on and it's that pattern. Yeah, there's 3 important patterns you need to learn for every arpeggio. So if we were to look at, and I'll go through them now. So if you take a major triad, C, E, G there, that's starting on the 2nd finger, right? We could also learn it starting on the 1st finger. So we'd move to the C there, 1st finger, 8th fret, major third pattern, so the E we take up here, 12th fret of the E string, and then we just have that G again on the 10th fret of the A string. Okay? So that's an alternative, a 1st finger major triad. Exactly the same notes, C, E, G, but we've got that E up here. We can also start it on the 4th finger. So we've got C, 8th fret E string, then the E there, 7th fret of the A string again, but this time with the 3rd finger, and then the G down here at the 5th fret of the D string. That's 3 different patterns for the same, or fingerings for the same 3 notes. C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G. And that means no matter what position you're in, you can grab one under your fingers. And if you were to extend that, in any one position, you can just grab them, right? So you can do the same for the minor triad. So if I was playing there, the minor triad that we just looked at, we could also start it on the 1st finger, C, E flat, 11th fret E string, and then the G, 10th fret A string. And then also starting on the 4th finger, C, E flat, 6th fret of the A string, and G, 5th fret of the D string. So that's 3 fingerings. 2nd finger, I've been wanting a cough. First finger and fourth finger for both the major triad and the minor triad. Right, so that's two really useful things to know, knowing that there's all those different fingering patterns for the same thing, for the same chord. But as well as that, it means that now when we work through the major scale, we can see these chords, right? So if we start again, we've got, C, E, G. If we build one starting on the D, the second note, play a note, miss the E, play the F, miss the G, play the A. What pattern is that? Well, we've just been practicing the fourth finger patterns, because that's what we're starting on, fourth finger, and we can see that it's a minor triad. And I'll save some time, I'll just work through them. Then we've got the minor triad starting on the third. Start on the fourth, we've got the major triad. Start on the fifth, we've got a major triad. Start on the sixth, we've got a major triad. Minor triad. And then, wanting to cough again. And then on the seventh, we've got a diminished triad, which is the same as a minor, but with a flattened fifth, right? So we have. So that's the chords within a key. Now, I've written these out as well, so let's just get rid of the thirds and we'll move to the chords. So you can see there, what we get is a set, this is just in C, we get a set of chords 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got major, minor, so 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, and 7 is diminished. Now, think back to when we talked about the thirds. It's the same pattern pretty much, but with the seventh as diminished. So 1, 4, and 5 are major. So 1 is major, 4 is major, and 5 is major, and the rest are minor, apart from 7, which is diminished. Now, it just so happens that a diminished chord has got a minor third in it. So, if you knew that that was minor before, it's just a very slight extension of that. So that's your next set of, the next, what would you call it? Sequence to learn. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So if I won't give you all these to learn, but let's say that I started at here, let's say, and worked through with those chords. I'd have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and then B diminished. Sorry, that'd be a minor 7 flat 5. So there's a diminished, and then back to C, or just in one position. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and then C major. So that's a set of triads. Now, if you extend them even more, add another third on. Okay, so play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note. We get seventh chords. And, I won't run through all of that because I'll be here all day, but we get another set of chords. So we've got our set of triads, because that was just 2 thirds built on top of each other. When you add 3, you get seventh chords. So it's just an extra third on the top. So we get C major 7, D minor 7. Well, I could do them in one area. So there's the C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, and then up to C major 7. And if I work through them as chords, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, and then C major 7. Okay, so that's the seventh chord. So there you go. So that's the set of chords that you'd use. Now, you might be thinking, well, what is the use of knowing that? Well, apart from just being able to get around in the key a little bit more, that's how you get chord progressions, diatonic chord progressions. You can have any chords you want. They would then be classed as chromatic. But if you want to play in a key and you want the basic palette of notes that you get in that key, well, that's the sequence. So if I wanted to compose a tune in C major, right? Well, I could use some chords from there. Now, there's you can't just pick them randomly. You have to know what they all sound like. You have to learn a little bit more about harmony in general, about how chord progressions work, about how root movement works, about voice leading, all this stuff. But just in terms of picking some chords out, let's go for some. So if we were going to, let's think of the numbers. Let's go for 1, 4, 5, 1. That's a pretty common chord progression. So if we look at the triads there in C major, you can see 1 is C major, 4 is F major, and 5 is G major. That's a very, very common chord progression. So I could have C major, then F major, G major. Okay, that worked. Let's put some minor chords in from there. So let's have a look at 1, 2, 4, 5. So same chord progression, but we've put a 2 in there, right? No, sorry, 1, 6, 4, 5. So 1 is C major, 6 is A minor, 4 is F major, and 5 is G major. 1, 6, 4, 5, right? 1, 6, 4, 5. C major, A minor, F major, G major. Earth angel, earth angel. So that's 1, 6, 1, 6, 4, 5. You could have 1, 5, 6, 4, which is a very, very popular one. So that would be 1, 5, 6, 4 would be C major, G major, A minor, F major. So it's just a different combination of the same chords. Don't stop believing. No woman, no cry, etc. And all I'm doing is taking numbers from there. But you can see that that's how we know. That's how you know that if you're in the key of C, you know that D is D minor, or that E is E minor. Or, you might have wondered that. Well, why is that chord a minor and that's a major? This is why. Because of that set of chords we've got that we did from harmonizing the major scale. Let's try something a little bit different. Let's try one with 7th chords. Let's try E minor 7 to E minor 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. So and what you'll notice there is when you get this movement by fourth, they're moving up by fourth. This cyclic movement, it's movement by cycle of fourths. You will hear this kind of stepping stoning back to the root note. Think chord 1, C major, is your home. So you can hear we're at home. Not that this is home, but, if I was at home, there I am. Then if I went to, let's say, chord 4, we've gone somewhere else. We've gone to a different village or town. Now we're back at home again. C. Let's go to G major. Again, that's a different town again. Now let's go back to F major. That's the other town. And now let's go back home. You can hear that sense of home. Okay, and that's how harmony works. You've got chord 1 is home, everything, that's where you get this tonal gravity from, where everything's wanting to fall back to or get pulled back into chord 1, the tonic, and everything else around it has got its own set of dissonances. Okay. Anyway, that's just a little bit about the harmony around that, but hopefully that will have helped a little bit. And I know that is quite a lot of information to take in one little live stream, but it gives you food for thought. It gives you a bunch of things to practice. You want to learn that. You can now see why, when I started at the beginning, why I said, right, you need to learn a few things before we start. You need to know a major scale. You need to know a major and minor third pattern. And then it's handy to know them in 2 different places, like I showed you. Then it's handy to know the major and minor chords starting on different fingers, so you can see them within the key, right? And then all of a sudden, by the end of it, we've got chord progressions, right? Cool. Okay, so that's enough of that rubbish for one day. Let's move me to the side again. So I'll just finish off with a few. I'll go back through all the things that have been said. I've probably been getting trolled and all kinds of stuff. Right, so first of all, because there's not as many, I'll just quickly run up through the Facebook ones, and then I'll get back over to the YouTube ones. So, do you use the pentatonic scale? Well, if you saw my thing yesterday, the video release, you will know, yes, I do use the pentatonic scale. Pretty much everybody uses the pentatonic scale. You can see how dark it's getting in here now. I need a light on. I don't know when to start. Can you pivot on all strings? Yes, you can. Michelle, thank you. That makes intervals so much easier to understand. Good. That's what I'm here for. Thanks, Alan. What kind of black bass is that? It's not a black bass, it's blue. It's just that the light's all dimming. I've not got any lights in here. Shall I put a light on? Hold on. That's better. Keith, in your basic fundamentals course, you state 1, 4, and 5 as perfect, 2, 3, 6, and 7 as major, unless I misunderstood. Yes, you misunderstood. Now, are you thinking... You're thinking of intervals. That's different. So, if you make those intervals... So, you've got a... Yeah, you're thinking of intervals. So, if you've got 1, it would be a perfect... It's called a perfect unison is the actual interval, but perfect first, right? If I go from 1 to 4, that's the perfect fourth interval. If I then go 1 to 5, that's a perfect fifth interval. We're not talking about the intervals from the root note. That's a completely different thing. What we're talking about here are intervals, you know, chords and harmony within the major scale. Yep. That is better. Right, cool. So that's the Facebook people. So now let me get... Oh, God, there's tons in the YouTube. It's always YouTube where I get trolled. I end up always having to get rid of somebody. Ban them. Right, I've seen all those ones. Right, I got down as far as there, I think. Hey Mark, I have a clip-on tuner. It seems to struggle getting the E string in tune. It seems to fight with notes on either side. Is this signs of needing new strings or a bad tuner? You'll often get tuners where you can't get it bang on. Don't ever think that you'll get the tuner bang on the middle. Because, well, here's an experiment for you. Or a test. When you're tuning on a tuner, play medium kind of, you know, let's say we take a G string, right? Take a G string, normal velocity or, you know, pressure, then play it really lightly, and then play it really hard, and have a look how different it is. It'll always be different depending on how hard you hit it. It'll go slightly sharp or slightly flat. So you can't really be thinking of it in terms of, oh, I've got to get it bang on. What you've got to do is just have it so that, in general, it gets on the middle. And if you're going to go for one side or the other, you know, in terms of bias, go slightly flat because you're likely to hit harder later on, and then it's going to sharpen. So if anything, tune slightly, you know, the amount that it goes down, have it slightly flat rather than, you know, bang on. And also, you're likely to slightly bend the strings a little bit, depending on what your technique's like or how hard you're holding down. You might bend them a tiny, tiny bit, you know, when you're playing, and that'll just be enough to make them sharpen up. So if you've already tuned a tiny, tiny bit flat, it'll kind of compensate for that. That doesn't mean always tune flat, but, you know, in terms of this kind of... general tuning area that you're going to have, bias it more to the flat side than the sharp side. You certainly don't want to be tuning sharp. Any chance of commentary analysis of old Wishbone Ash bass lines with Martin Turner? I might. Well, I don't do that many bass lines in terms of analysis, for a pretty good reason, actually. I don't want the channel taken down. I have done them in the past, and you'll have seen me doing various ones, but I'm always really, really careful with how I do it. So I might do like top 5 bass lines of this or this bass line, whatever. I try not to use the names of them too much because I don't want to get too much attention, in terms of copyright, because they'll publish it. Because I always, add tab and stuff to it and stuff like that. Now, if you're a small channel, it doesn't matter, but I've got enough followers and views for the publishers to come and, clean me out or tell me, you probably all saw what happened to Marlo DK that time. He ended up having his channel completely taken down. So I have to be really, really careful. So that's why you don't get that many. Because it'd be dead simple for me to just, do a cover of every single Beatles tune, every single Who tune, and, just work through them all. Sabbath, whatever. And then just show you how to play them all. But I would get taken down very quickly if I did that. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people doing that on YouTube, but they're generally under the radar. That's why Scott Devine doesn't do it. I've had quite a few conversations with him about this, about how, about the copyright thing. And neither of us are, last time I saw him, we were talking about we need to get some bloody lawyer or something to actually look into this, the legal side of it, just so that we can see what, where we stand with it. Because it's supposed to be that there's a certain amount of allowance for educational purposes, but you got to remember that we're actually selling things. The reason I do this is I've got a website and I sell education. I sell courses. It's not for free. I'm not doing it for free. I have a lot of things to pay for. It's a business. So a lot of the YouTube is my shop window basically. It's that's the way that people come to see me and see what I do. I mean, I love doing it and all that, but if they came looking and they said, okay, well, is he, selling anything? The minute that they see that I'm selling courses, they'd say, well, hold on, this baseline is actually sending people to the website and you're making money off it. So we want a cut of that, So that's why I don't do a lot of those things. I mean, that's not anything to do with the Wishbone Ash thing necessarily. It's just that while we're on this topic of covers and analyses of different bass lines, because I'd love to be able to do that. I'd love to be able to, because I'd never run out of material, would I? Okay, hello from Barcelona. Hi there. I miss Barcelona. I've not been there for ages. What do you recommend for cramps? Just getting back into it after 20 years and find that I'm done. My hand feels it. I don't get cramp afterwards. I don't get cramp that often. But I'll tell you one place that I do get cramp if I don't gig for a long time, like now, right? And then if all of a sudden I take a really tough gig, right? I'll get cramp here. I'll often get cramp in that hand when I'm doing something. It can be something really... something that would be so easy for me normally. If I'm just doing octaves. Let's say I'm just doing that, right? On stage, doing that for ages, all of a sudden I'll start cramping. Now, I can't even feel that at the moment. That's as if I've not even played, right? There's no pressure, no nothing. But, in the heat of the moment, if I'm, halfway through a lot of sets or whatever, I don't know, and I'm pressing down a little bit too hard, I'll often cramp up there, and then it's just a case of rubbing it off. But in terms of just general hand kind of feel, the feeling of your hands when you've just started up, you're going to feel some, you can't get around that. You are going to feel it in your hands for a certain amount of time. Just realised I look really, I'm like really unshaven at the moment. I just look really grufty. Couldn't tell with all the lighting off. Cheers from a Warwick bass player from Brazil. You tips rock, dude. Cool. Cheers. I've never had a Warwick bass. One of my old bass teachers had one. I used to love it. What about the first 3 frets? Do you keep your hands parallel there as well? Yep. I try to. It depends. If I'm going to be doing a big stretch, yeah, I do. It's the bringing that round. Oh, I just noticed on Facebook, Strub tuners are good for accurate tuning. Peterson, Strub, a clip, etc. Yeah. I'm going to buy a Peterson Strub, not a Strub or clip. I'm going to buy one of the other Strub tuners because I might do a tuner shootout. And the Petersons are a good reference. On the G major, the sharps are a result of the math in the steps. I know B sharp. Was that a response to something before? The perfect 4th and 5th intervals are always major, yeah. Yes. You have to get used to the fact that looking at intervals in a key, like looking at, in relation to the root note, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, major 7th, is a different thing. It's related, but it's, you have to learn them separately. Learning that major 3rd, minor 3rd, major 3rd, major 3rd, minor 3rd, etc. That's a separate, the two side-by-side things, and you learn them separately. Like, they are related, obviously, but one's learning intervals within a major scale, and the other one is learning harmonization of the major scale. Oh, I've just dropped down too much. Can you... hold on. Oh, I've gone right down. Sorry. Where's the autumn leaves backing track? Yeah, I never managed to get it up there, so I need to put that on a separate page. So I will do. I'll put up a page and link it. I've just had no time to do it this week. Mark, does this series go further from here on? Do you mean, does it change once you go past the octave? No, it's the same. In terms of... Then it just starts again. Major, minor, minor, major, major, and then, it's it just repeats at the octave. It wouldn't if you had a multiple octave scale, but or a what do you call them? A harmonic projection. The words of Vincent Persichetti, but it's no, it's all within one scale, one octave. Can you show me pivoting on the E string about the 14th fret? I play 5 string and have difficulties as I'm laying on the thumb, so to say. So on the E string about the 14th fret, yeah, I mean, it's hard here because you've got obviously the heel of the bass and everything. So another thing that you can do is make sure that you've raised the neck if you're trying to get bigger stretches. If you're down here, it's going to be tougher. You'll find that if you're think of a stretch that you're having problems with, and then try it like this, and then try it with the neck raised. Also, I don't practice with the bass on the right leg. I practice it with it's kind of on the left leg, but in the middle, basically. I've got the strap here. It's not even touching my leg. It's kind of there, in the middle. More like... It's more like classical guitar, really, It's more like that. So everybody likes the Peterson stuff. They're a bit more expensive though, and some of the Pearson the tuners are incredibly expensive. I think I saw, I think they've got one of them that's about $5,000. It's a bit heavy for a tuner, isn't it? I think that's the rack mount one. But that's not just for bass, that's for everything. And it's insanely accurate. And I think that's actually for analysis of, like pitch analysis. Turn that off. I have a question. I have difficulty in plucking in my index finger because it's not the same sound as when plucking in the middle finger. Well, it's going to be one of two things. Either your nail is longer on one finger than the other, so you might be catching with it, or you're picking harder with the other. So what can sometimes happen is you get or like this. The aim is to make them both the same. So you just want to practice playing, figure out which one's harder, figure out which one's louder. Ow. If you pick, if it's like the I don't know, your second finger, concentrate on playing that one lighter or the other one harder, and then just concentrate on getting a nice consistent da 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 da. Hi Mark, I'm just tuning in, just curious as to what you mean by chord. Oh, you always get some weirdo causing aggro, just being a pain. Slagging me off, slagging everybody else off, that kind of stuff. What is this? Or you'll get the obvious or normal ones where everybody's like, stop talking, start playing. You'll get that kind of thing because, I know what it's like. People that watch YouTube, they go on there. They have their own thing that they're going on there to do, their own agenda. So they're going on there to look. They have an idea of what they want to be seeing, which might not tally with the thing that they're watching. So with me, if I'm doing a diatribe on music theory or whatever, they're wanting to just sit and watch me play, Chili Peppers tunes. That's because that's what they're used to. That's what they think bass, and they think learning bass. And you'll only get beginners doing that, I'm pretty sure. But they're used to looking around on YouTube for covers and stuff like that, and looking for somebody. Trying to find somebody playing a Meshuggah song, or I don't know, whatever. And then they come and watch me, and I'm sat there talking about intervals and harmonizing the major scale or whatever, and that's just boring to them. They just want to, and it's weird, because I'd never actually find any interest in going on YouTube and actually just watching somebody play a tune, playing a cover of a tune. Like watching a bass player play over the original. I know that's a thing, and I know people do it now, but that's not where I'd come from. That's not what I'd be interested in. And you wouldn't learn anything from that unless you were just learning that song. And that's fair dues, right? But that's what you often get. It's like, play bass. I came here to watch you play bass. And I have no interest in opinions on my bass playing. Good job. I wouldn't be very good at doing this if I took people's criticisms badly, would I? You've probably all seen the kind of stuff that gets leveled at me in the comments. Not these comments, but, comments on some of the videos. I find it funny. I love it. Well, I don't love it. I think, it's just highlights the idiocy of the planet. But, I've often said to my wife, I keep wanting to say fiance, but my wife, she just could not handle doing it because... and I know loads of people that couldn't handle doing it because if you were putting yourself out, because she's a singer, right? She's a really good singer, and if she was doing some videos of her singing on YouTube for everybody to criticize, I just don't think she could handle it. It just because people are so, especially female singers, it's awful. I mean, and she's really pretty as well. So she'd have one of two things. She'd either have people salivating over her, just being, just like loads of sexual comments, or just like really nasty comments. You can't help it. Well, not you can't help it. You'll get one of the two. You'll get, for every few nice comments that you get, you'll just get, hundreds of people saying awful things. I don't cop for it as bad as a lot of people. I mean, to be honest, I do quite well with it. But me and Scott were talking about the worst comments we'd had, and we were like comparing the worst things, and he gets it way worse than me. He gets like because he's got a lot bigger following, obviously, but so he'll get like, like people emailing him and just saying the worst things, But it comes with the territory. I get it. My inbox is full of people just being nasty to me. But I'm pretty thick-skinned, so I really don't care. I think that's part of being a musician, though, isn't it? If you're used to putting yourself out there on stage, you're generally going to get used to people slagging you off. Slagging the band off, whatever, Some of the arguments, the worst ones for me was, you all know that I had quite a few years playing on like cruise lines and things, but because of the type of passenger that you get on there, they're like a lot older, so you'll get like people in their 80s and sometimes 90s, as well as everybody else. I mean, there's teenagers or whatever, but you'll get a much older age range where, when people get to that certain age where they just don't care anymore and they'll just say anything, and there's absolutely no censorship on them at all. So you'll have people coming up and they'll just say awful things, or you'll get them complaining about sound all the time. And I went through a phase, and it was one of the things that made me realize that I shouldn't be doing it anymore, is because you'd get people coming up and complaining, saying, it's too loud, it's too this, it's too that, why don't you play this and why don't you play that? But being really aggressive with it. And I'd just get aggressive back. So, this dude, like little guy of about like 70-year-old, and they'd be like me stood over him, just like, curled lip and actually getting really aggressive. And then I think, hold on, I'm going to get kicked off here if I'm not careful. So it was, I thought I've got to get out of this. Because I was band leader on there, like MD for quite a while. And of course, the first person they see is me. They'll come up, they won't go up to anybody else in the band. They come up to me and start slagging me off and telling me this stuff. And I like an argument, so, I used to argue with them. You wouldn't think it. I seem quite jovial, I suppose, on these things, but I can be quite argumentative sometimes when provoked, Right. Enough of that digression. So I'll just finish off with these last few questions down at the bottom. So my pinky finger is weak. Yep, that's a very, very common thing, and you just have to use it more. There's no way around it. You just have to use it more. The more that the only reason the other fingers are stronger is because you use them more. It's not like your finger, I suppose there are things that contribute to that. Obviously it's a smaller finger, it's in a different area, the muscles and tendons are different, so I suppose there is a natural tendency for it to be weaker anyway, but just try using it more, just in whatever you play. So instead of maybe using first and third finger all the time, try using first and fourth finger. So if you're going to be playing something like that, instead of holding the thumb over which is a common thing to do, just try getting that fourth finger in there. Minor scales, they're always a good thing to practice, because you've got to use your fourth finger on there for that fingering. In fact, scales in general, or just pieces. Whatever it is, like if you think about those kind of classical pieces or any of those kind of things, there's always a lot of fourth finger movement in there. Might have been struggling with the fourth finger minor position from the chord tones course. Any advice? What you mean? That one. I'm surprised actually. That's generally falls under the fingers quite easily. Fourth finger minor position. Yeah, it'll be that one. Yeah, just practice. That's an awful answer, isn't it? It's just not helpful at all. Just practice. Yeah, it's like he's wanting me to give him some good tips for how to deal with it. It's like, just practice. But sometimes that's all you can say, really. Because you've got the information there, you know what you're playing, you know, it is a thing you're having problems with, so there is something that you're practicing. So if you're practicing something and it's really tough and you can't do it, just keep doing it and you'll get it eventually. Unless you've got some ridiculous disability, like no arms. Yeah, that'll be a problem. When making up a bass line in the key of C, for example, and the chords are 1, 3, and 5, would you pick notes from C major, E minor, and G major? Yes. Triads seem too common and boring, but you could use seventh chords, but you don't just have to use chord tones. That's the thing, and that's why in the Chord Tone Essentials course, I don't just talk about chord tones themselves, because music isn't just made up of chord tones. It's made up of non-chord tones as well. But in learning, and this is the kind of weird thing about it, in learning about chord tones, you also learn more about non-chord tones. Because learning about C, E, and G in C major, you learn that D, F, and A, if you're playing over a C major chord, C, E, and G are the notes of the chord, so you know that they're consonant, but you also end up learning that D, F, and A are the dissonant notes in there. I mean, if I just put that, the loop on again that I was... Okay, so it's in G major, right? So that's a G major chord. So if I was to play just the notes of the G major chord, or G major 7... Each of those notes is consonant and works over that. There's no problems there. But if I was to just pick out the other notes of G major, the G major scale, because somebody might say, oh, you can use a G major scale over a G major chord. You can, but listen to this. Right, so we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, right? So C is in the key of G major. Let's have a listen to how that sounds. Here's the second, the A. And now the sixth. I mean, they're all right, if you accept them for what they are, but what they are dissonant. So they don't have the, that consonant sound. They want to resolve. So when I play the C, hear how that resolves. Okay, so if I was playing a line, third, fourth, fifth, right? The third and the fifth are consonant and the fourth's dissonant. But because I put it in the middle as a passing tone, you don't notice it. All that happens is you have consonants, dissonance, resolving to dissonance. I mean, obviously it all happens within a matter of, microseconds, but... And there's the sixth again, back down to the fifth. There's the seventh leading up to the root. Etc. You get the idea. That's just using melodic devices. I'm just using things like passing tones, enclosures, neighbor notes, all that kind of stuff around the chord tones. Now, obviously, you don't want to be thinking of that when you're improvising. You don't want to be thinking neighbor tones and all this kind of stuff. It might drift into your head at some point because you know what they are. What you want to do is just make music instinctively. But in learning about chord tones over a chord, you learn what works, basically. That's what you would, class as working. And then the other things are the ones that don't work, right? But they do. It's just that, because if somebody was to just say, "Oh no, you just use chord tones," well, that takes a lot of the spice out of music. Really, it's the dissonance that makes music, that makes it work. You don't want things that just sound like arpeggios all the time. So, yeah, so that's. I don't even know where I got to that from. Oh yeah, we're making up a bass line in the key of C. Yeah, you want to start using the non-chord tones, but use them right. That's why you'll hear somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, but might have some chops, playing over a song and playing a load of notes, and then just land. And you can tell that they know their scales, but then they end up landing on the wrong notes in a way. So if I was playing over that, and I think, oh, it's in G major, I can use the G major scale. Just landing on the fourth or the second or the sixth, or and it can sound nice, but you want it to be. You've got to know what you're doing. You know what I mean? And so this all kicks in on walking bass lines and all that stuff as well. Right. Ugh, I said I was going to be going in a second. All of a sudden, there's a load more comments. When you're in a band, what does one do when you're in a band and kind of get along with bandmates, but love the music, but are offered a position to play where you like the people, but the music isn't all that good? What does one do when they're in a band and right. So what you're looking at there is exclusivity of bands. I mean, I've had times when I've been in like 7 or 8 bands all at the same time. You don't have to be in just one band. I mean, if you have to pick one and just stick with it, then I've been in loads of bands where I like the people, but the music's been a bit naff. That said, a lot of the ones I've been really lucky actually with a lot of the bands that I've played in, because I've generally, the people that I've got on with have been good musicians. It's very rare that I've actually been in a band with any bad musicians. But yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends what you're trying to get out of it. I mean, but I've done a load of other stuff where I'm just doing it for money. I've been a professional musician for the past 20-odd years. So in all that time, I have not even really thought that much about whether I get on with the people, even though I generally do. It's not like I'm going to, I can't think of many bands I've been in where I really didn't get on with anybody. I mean, if any of them are listening, there might be some of them that didn't get on with me. Thought I was a dickhead. But I don't... I don't really remember really hating anybody in a band or not getting on with them. So really, I haven't got that much experience with that. But I know that happens a lot. I mean, that's why a lot of bands split up, isn't it? But the thing is, in bands, there's so many weird sort of pressures that come into play. Especially when you're on tour and you're spending so much time in somebody's company. You never... When you started in a band, you didn't think... You were thinking at the start, are we going to make music we're going to make music together, or are we going to make good music together, blah, 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 blah. You weren't thinking, can we cohabit? Can we, if we were to spend 6 months of the year in each other's company, in close proximity, would we get on then? That's not something that comes into your mind when you first start a band. And that's something that does come into play. And it's why a lot of musicians, I think, actually learn to keep their mouth shut and just sort of let things slide a bit when you're in that kind of position all the time. You kind of learn that you need to be able to get your own space. You need to know that you shouldn't really... Sometimes there's things that you shouldn't even talk about. It's like when people say about like having conversations. It's like if you want to keep the conversation nice and, jovial, don't talk about religion. Don't talk about politics. There's a few things that you shouldn't talk about. And if you kind of follow those guidelines, you know that you're going to be okay. But I mean, that's separate from what you're asking. You're basically saying, would it be all right to join a band, or would I ever join a band just because I get on with the people, even though the music isn't all that good? I would find it very, very difficult to do a band with some people that I'm friends with, but yet the time. It's not about the music for me being good. I mean, because I've played in vast numbers of bands where you're playing completely different styles, and to be honest, how many of those bands have had styles of music that I'm really into? I'm into a lot of like rock stuff and like prog rock stuff and a lot of weird classical stuff, and there's a lot of weird stuff that I'm into. I don't have like mainstream taste, but most of the stuff that I've done over the past like 15 years has all been like stuff that I would never even think about listening to, particularly disco music. I mean, I like disco stuff now from playing it, but at the time, and when I first started doing it, I was like, "What's this?" I wasn't into it at all. Country and western music, ballroom music, waltzes, old style barn dancers and St. Bernard's waltzes and all this kind of stuff, like ballroom things. Would I ever sit and listen to any of those? Or sing-alongs, roll out the barrel. Would I sit and listen to any of that? No, of course I wouldn't. But I've been paid to do it. So and because I've got a very broad taste in music, even though there's a lot of weird stuff that I like, I don't really hate any styles of music. Good job. I've sort of just got on with it. And I think it's one thing that's worth bearing in mind if you want to become a professional musician. If you want to become a pro that gets gigs and you actually want to make a living out of it, there's two things that you really can't afford to do. You can't afford to be selective in terms of style. You can't be thinking, well, I am only going to play death metal. Yeah, all right, you might get famous in a death metal band, but you ain't going to be taking this. If you really want to make money from it as a professional musician, as a musical whore, which is probably what you would call me, you really can't afford to do that. And the other thing is, you can't afford to have an ego. If you've got any ego, that's just going to fall out of you very quickly because people are going to be telling you what to do. The number of things that can happen that if you've got any amount of big ego at all, it's just going to get thrashed, with all the variety of different things that you might do and the people that you're going to be working for. So, two things you need to get rid of. But if you wanted to become a rock star, obviously, fair dues, do what you want, Which is actually what I wanted to be when I was younger. That kind of fell by the wayside. Hi, what do you think about practicing by playing covers of songs I like? Brilliant. That's all I did for about the first 2 years or 3 years of playing. I didn't do anything but playing to tapes. I had all these mixtapes that I used to make up of like different tunes. So I'd got me one that were like a load of metal stuff. So I'd have like, certain things from the Master of Puppets album. And then I'd have like little bits from like a Pantera album, like Cowboys from Hell album. And then I'd have bits of this Anthrax thing. I was sort of like a big metal player at that point. And then I got really into things like Dream Theater when Images and Words first came out. And so I'd be working through that. And then I'd have another tape that I got a load of Billy Sheehan things and like 3-finger picking and tapping and stuff like that. So I got like a bunch of Mr. Big tunes and I got David Lee Roth albums, stuff like that. And I just that's all I did. That's all I played. For about, 2.5 years, 3 years. It was great. Got me playing, got me to be able to, do whatever. And that's all I did. Didn't need to know anything about music theory, didn't know any of that. Just play away. And to be honest, I was actually probably better off in some ways because I probably didn't think as much. I just put my hands on the bass and woo! Yeah, I'd be all out of key and everything. Didn't care. I was like, check this out. That roll out the barrel was awesome. Thanks very much. You got a voice like an angel, Chief. Yeah, not really. What do you think about plucking the strings too much? I really need to go in a second. So how many have we got left? I think I'm down at the bottom. Yeah, so last few. What do you think about plucking the strings too much? So you get a noise, very high frequency, string hits fret, which is not because of low action. Many bassists doesn't take it as a mistake. It depends. If you've seen any of my... I did a live stream once on tone and stuff. You can pick light, you can pick heavy, you can move anywhere on the along the string to play it, and every single aspect of that will give you a different tone. So if I'm playing back here, I get a certain tone. As I move down, I will get a plethora of different types of sound as you move along. Hard to tell on this, but trust me, if you're in a band and you're playing live, just try that. Set your amp flat. Have your pickups maybe flat out, just up to what it is. Treble and everything, preamp-wise flat. Volume's just up. And then just get your volume to what you want it. And then try playing the stuff that you play in different areas of the neck, and you will be stunned by the difference in tone. Like, you can completely make the bass sound like a different instrument just by playing there or there. You might be playing something and you're thinking, it's not really sitting right, and then you just move your fingers about a quarter of an inch that way, and all of a sudden, the whole thing works. Or then you move down here and you think, oh man, that sounds so much better. You might not feel the same. You might not feel in terms of under your fingers. Sometimes I don't like playing right up here sometimes. It just feels a bit flappy to me. I prefer the feel of it being tight back here. But man, for some tunes, you got to do it. And you can change the tone with your hands so much more than you ever would on with the amp. I'm sure some people will be thinking, no, that's rubbish. I can put distortion on my bass and I can do this, and if I turn the treble up full and I turn the bass right down, I'll get this kind of tone. I'm telling you, you can do more with your hands. Take me up on the challenge. But it only works if it's live. You don't notice in here. But if you're loud and you're in the pocket and everything's going, just try and move, because the reason I say that is because somebody could say, well, if you turn up the treble full and that, it'll make a difference. Not live, it won't. You won't hear it. If you're playing along to drums and you turn the treble right up, you ain't going to hear it. It can add a certain thing in a mix, by adding treble on there. But it's not the kind of thing that you're probably thinking of. It doesn't. The tone that you're hearing when it's soloed is not the thing that you're going to be hearing when it's loud. There is a very big difference between the sound that you have live on stage and the sound that you hear when it's soloed. When there's drums playing, guitar, keys, whatever, brass, whatever it is, there's a sound of your bass in a mix, which is a completely different thing to your sound when you're playing, on your own. And you just don't realize that until you start playing. And then all of a sudden, it's like you're trying to do stuff with the amp and trying to do things because, the sound that you get that's really lovely in your bedroom just might not cut the mustard when you're live in a band. And vice versa. The sound that really works cutting through a mix can sound crap when you're playing on your own. If you don't change any of your settings, if you've just done a gig one night, and then, let's say you just left all the gear. Let's say that you were staying over at the place. They locked up. Everything was safe. You came down and you just turned everything on again in the morning. Start playing. You'll be stunned by what it sounds like on its own. It'll be really, really deafeningly loud, and probably you'll have a bunch of mids kicking out and you think, oh man, that sounds awful. Nipples. Oh, here we go. Good old... Trolls coming. Black. See you later. I love having the power to do that. Do all webinar instructors talk this much on instructor or play this little? Well, it's not a webinar, and I've done a lot of playing in this one. You've probably just turned up. Depends. Like I said earlier on, it depends what you're trying to learn. If you were just wanting to sit and watch somebody play bass, I'm not the guy to watch. You wouldn't. Put it this way: if you went to a music college, right, paid thousands and thousands of pounds for a music education, do you really think you're ever going to listen to your bass teacher sit there playing? It's not going to happen. Or anybody. You can sit in a harmony seminar, or any of your seminars. Are you going to hear much playing? Not that much. You might do a lot of playing yourself, but you ain't going to hear that much playing. You'll hear a lot of talking. You'll do a lot of reading. Right, very quickly, what do you think about classical music on bass? Do you think if Bach or any other they've composed music for bass guitar. Hold on. What do you think about classical music and bass? Do you think if Bach or any other could compose music for bass guitar? Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you were to see, oh, hold on. If Bach was to write a piece for bass guitar, it'd be great. I mean, it's like all those things, like the, for instance, I mean, that is a Bach piece. That's a J.S. Bach one. That one, that's CPE Bach. But you get the idea, but it would probably sound something like that. Right, last question. Can you give some tips and advice on starting out as a bass teacher? Well, starting out as a bass teacher depends on where you're living. You're going to need to advertise a little bit. Maybe go to local music shops and sort of register with them. That can often be useful. I haven't done one-on-one tuition for a while. But if you're, especially while I'm living on the Isle of Wight, but if you want to start doing bass teaching in terms of this kind of thing, then obviously you need to start getting some kind of YouTube presence and, website and things like that. Getting Skype students, that's a good way of doing it. I don't have any Skype students anymore. I've cut down on that because I just don't have time to do it with Talkingbass. But I had quite a lot of Skype students at one point, and that's a really good way of doing it because it's you don't have to be going off trying to get to people's houses or having them come to you and stuff. So yeah. What do you last one? What do you think about bass and progressive music with odd time signatures? Yeah, well, I'm into a lot of prog rock and prog metal and all that kind of stuff. Not so much these days. I'm not that much into a lot of the stuff. I love Stephen Wilson and Porcupine Tree and that, but not the progressive death kind of stuff, which is surprising considering I used to be into like Cannibal Corpse and Deicide, Dark Angel and all that stuff back in the 90s. But yeah, I'm into a lot of that stuff. I'm particularly into a lot of stuff like Genesis and Yes and, King Crimson, Gentle Giant. So, yeah, I love all that stuff. Cool. Okay, so that's it. And I will hopefully be back next week. So, for a lot more talking for you guys. All right, then. I'll hopefully see you all next week. See you later.